Welcome back to Men and the City. In today's video, we're going to talk about the neo-masculine movement, and we're going to pick up where we left off in the last video, The Return of Kings. And I want to start this video by reading a quote from a man named Eric Hoffer, who wrote a very interesting book called The True Believer, and I will link to that below. So let me go ahead and read it because it's going to set the stage for this video, which is a very important video for all of us watching. In time of crisis, when the nation's existence is threatened and it tries to reinforce its unity and generate in its people a readiness for self-sacrifice, it almost always assumes in some degree the character of a mass movement. Now, Eric Hoffer in that quote was talking specifically about democracies. He was talking about the prevalence or the proclivity of democratic governments to descend into mass movements when they experience crises. And remember, this relates specifically to what we talked about in the last video, which was the state of exception, the emergency that overwhelms the state and causes a power vacuum that the sovereign or the king must fill. So if you want to watch more of that, please look at the link below. In any case, today we're going to talk about the neo-masculine movement. We're going to talk about mass movements in general as the precondition for that sovereign or that king to fill the vacuum. Because I believe that mass movements are on the rise, and they're on the rise underneath this umbrella of what I call the neo-masculine movement. Now, a historical precedent that I think is particularly relevant for the time in which we live is the Protestant Reformation. Because if you think about it, Martin Luther, who in many respects was a Puritan, the first Puritan, a man that was trying to purify a very corrupt Catholic Church that was exploiting its population and had unfortunately spiraled into a kind of degeneracy that the public at large was simply unaware of. Martin Luther set in motion a revolutionary explosion in Europe that then set the condition or set the stage for the emergence of the modern world as we understand it today. Even modern democracy, you might say, is derived from the Protestant Reformation because it split the legitimacy of government from a sovereign or a theological authority into a more secular authority. Well, Martin Luther initiated this mass movement, you might say, by challenging the legal authority or the spiritual authority of the Catholic Church of his day, or the church of his day, which we know of today as the Catholic Church. Well, today, the global elites and the governments that they dominate, the financial system that they control, the mainstream press that they influence, or that they orchestrate to their ends, has adopted a similar veneer of corruption, of concentrated power and inefficiency and poison that is giving rise to a broad-based resistance against it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the neo-masculine movement. Now, what is the neo-masculine movement exactly? Well, at the moment, it consists of various threads that I believe are being piecemealed together over time. One of which is the red pill. And the red pill itself, I think, began really as an adjustment to changes in intergender dynamics, or to the reality that the relationship between men and women has changed, particularly in the last 20 years, and that there needs to be an adjustment to that. That's how the red pill began, but it has spread. It has become all-encompassing. It encompasses not just a red pill on intergender dynamics, it's encompassed a red pill on politics or demographics, or on the mainstream press or the financial system. And so you're seeing various movements emerge under that umbrella. Some of it is the manosphere, right? So the manosphere is, you might say, the consolidation around these red pill principles as it pertains to intergender dynamics. Another is the Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency movement. And that is a consolidation or a coalescence around a realization that the financial system is broken. Another iteration of this is the alternative media, right? So you're seeing new platforms emerge, whether it's new social media or new video streaming or new news media. You might think of people like Tucker Carlson or Elon Musk as figuring prominently in this movement away from a legacy media structure that has lost the confidence of the public at large, right? All of these are various strains of a neo-masculine movement. I've also talked about sexless men. So these might not be men that are necessarily part of the manosphere, but they're disaffected young men in the sense that they've been discarded or ignored or they've been sidelined by the mainstream, and their number is growing. All of these are elements that I believe are coagulating underneath, you might say, the neo-masculine movement. Now, within the continuum of upheaval or furor or revolt, which is effectively what is going on in the modern world today, underneath the umbrella of the neo-masculine movement, I want to call attention to a historical precedent that I think will help us better understand how these ideas are being pieced together. And that is a concept called the second pivot. And I'll link to this idea below because it's very important to understand within the context of what's happening regarding the neo-masculine movement. And that is that the second pivot thinks of society really as the emergence of legitimate authority. The first pivot is the rise of a government. It's the Constitution or the constitutionally founded regime that we think of today in the U.S. government. That is the first pivot. The second pivot is the emergence of a new authority that emerges in parallel or alongside or in opposition to that legacy authority structure. Well, what the red pill, what the manosphere, the cryptosphere, the sexless men, the alternative media complex, what all of these building blocks amount to is the foundational pillars of a second pivot. And that is to say, of new rivaling authority that's challenging the legacy structure, and it's only getting stronger, and it's only going to substantiate and ultimately, I think, empower the neo-masculine movement and eventually the sovereign that we spoke about in the last video. This neo-masculine movement, which I believe is, as I said, burgeoning all around us, is about to get even stronger. So stay tuned for more, and we'll talk soon.